Alright, so welcome to a new video. Today, I want to talk about why so many people quit Amazon KDP, and of course, not just make observations, but to try and give solutions as well. And in this video, I'm going to showcase things and talk about things that I've never shown before and never spoken about before on my channel. So we're going to talk about something people have spoken about a million times before, and that is the saturation of the marketplace. We're going to talk about obsessions and the reality of publishing being extremely boring. Then we're going to talk about something massive, a very cagey subject that people don't want to talk about, and that is secrets and fear. It's going to be extremely important for your progression when it comes to publishing. Then we're going to talk about inflated expectations, high risk, high reward projects, poor guidance, and staying motivated. And these are going to be all the reasons why I personally think people quit their publishing journey. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Chris. I've sold over 170,000 books on Amazon. I've been doing this for over 10 years. Most of this time has been massively unsuccessful until the last sort of few years where I changed my approach to publishing. And we're going to talk about all this as we go through today's video. But also, if you get a second throughout the course of this video, when you're on one of the boring bits of me ranting about something, feel free to check out my new membership at Raydog.com. You're going to be pleasantly surprised. So let's get into this and talk about whether the marketplace has become saturated. So this is a typical KDP YouTube channel where we go ahead and just say, no, of course it's not saturated. It's just your mindset. And there is something in that, because I have been doing this since 2012, 2013, and people have been saying this ever since then. I'm going to explain in that little red section at the start of this video. I'm going to explain why it's so important, because this never, ever gets spoken about. Amazon is indeed a ferociously competitive marketplace. Is it really flooded with low content shit and low quality AI? So I'm going to say yes and no. But the reality here is that when it comes to bad books, Amazon doesn't promote them. You can shove up as many bad books as you want, and the chance of your book being pushed out and promoted to a wider audience on Amazon is very, very low. So for me, in my opinion, I've always believed that there's enough room for people that can add something of value to the marketplace. And in case you can't tell, this is a topic that I don't really want to talk about too much, because I think when it comes to the whole mindset of something being saturated, if you believe the marketplace is too competitive, then like I said, it's likely that you're not interested in creating something that adds value to said marketplace. That being said, I do think this is one of the reasons why people quit before they even get started. With any make money online pursuit, there's a lot of commentary online. Typically, there's a lot of overly confident YouTube and Reddit comments from people that have performed the bare minimum. They've got sucked into this kind of get rich side hustle scheme, tried it for a little bit, and then quit. So whilst I know this doesn't exactly answer the question, I want to show something that I've never shown people before on this channel, and that is one of my kind of discarded projects. Now, the reason that it's discarded is because I have about a million different ideas that I work on at once. This was just one that I'm not going through with, and not until maybe later on in the year. So the typical standard that we have for books that are being uploaded, and if you don't know much about me, I pretty much exclusively publish coloring books on Amazon, and this is the type of book that gets published pretty much every single day onto Amazon. So this is one of the problems. This is why people quit publishing, is because they publish books like this. They run a ton of advertising money to these books because they watched it from some hot niche video, because they think plants and flowers bold and easy coloring book is a hot niche. They think they can get ranked for these keywords, which aren't really keywords. They put a lot of money into their advertising spend, and then the book tanks. They lose a ton of money, they lose their motivation, and then they quit. And the reality here, again, what nobody really wants to talk about or showcase is the type of books that actually sell, are the type of books that actually add something new to the marketplace. So as an example, one of my abandoned projects here is this kind of cozy criminals and heroes coloring book. This was just a rough version of the book cover, but what we're looking to do, and what I think people should be doing with every single niche that they try and get into, is kind of follow these broad niches like Bold and Easy or like the cozy coloring books, and then introduce something new into the marketplace that makes sense. So that's what I preach. It can be quite high risk, but the reward can be pretty high as well. And the thing is, there is absolutely nothing wrong with publishing something like this, but I can pretty much guarantee, just from looking at this book, I don't know the BSR or how long this book has been live on Amazon, but I can pretty much guarantee it's not going to make any organic sales or make profit. It obviously depends on how they've had this created, but I just don't think they're going to make a profit on this book. Now, the goal for what I think for most people when it comes to publishing books is to solely work on making their way toward a higher quality book, a more interesting book, a book that adds value to the marketplace. So that takes some people a month, it takes some people a week, it takes some people 3 years, it takes some people 10 years. Okay. But the most important thing is that people progress to this stage, which unfortunately not many people are willing to do, which I'm going to talk about why that is the case in the upcoming slides. So we're going to revisit all of that, and we're going to talk about obsessions and reality here, because I do think this is another reason why people end up quitting, because the emphasis gets put onto these kind of hacks. So like review farming, trying to get as many reviews as possible. Research tools, I mean, I do like some of the research tools. I just think the emphasis for these type of books is massive. These type of tools is just way too much. I'm going to show you something in a second that's going to be a massive eye-opener for you. So regarding cool tools like Helium 10, I like it, but even me at this stage of doing this for so long, I don't pay for this. I don't use this anymore. And another one is keywords, like obsessing over keywords and back-end keywords. And like I've just said, I do believe that people quit because their focus gets pushed massively towards these hacks, when really maybe this would have worked in 2016, 2017. But the reality now in 2025, we really shouldn't be putting this much emphasis onto the above. So I've even had discussions and arguments with people. I've seen people in Facebook groups arguing over things. If we put commas in our back end keywords, do we get ranked for that? Who cares? Who cares? I'm going to give you an example, because like I said, the reality is very boring. Now, just to showcase the sales that I've had for my best-selling book, which was published back in 2022, the end of 2022. To make a point, I will refresh this, obviously. So just to make a point here, my best-selling book has sold over 82,000 units. And to make a point here, when it comes to where you should be putting your emphasis, the back-end keywords for this and the title and the subtitle for this book, I came up with them in about 10 seconds. I wrote out a title that was pretty normal, pretty average. I didn't put hardly anything into the back end keywords. But what I really focused on was introducing something better or new into the marketplace. Those are the things that people should be focusing on. And like I said, when you don't focus on that, you focus on these hacks, and you wonder why you're not making any sales. And again, people end up quitting. And like I say, this is the reality, that if you want to make good money with publishing, you need to put your time, your effort, and your money into pursuits that are actually going to move the needle for you and help you progress to seeing better sales. And unfortunately, the reality, the things that really matter, like your book covers and your unique selling points, they can feel pretty boring. So revisiting, now this is important. One of the most important things I think I've ever spoken about on my channel is something nobody wants to talk about, which is fair enough to some extent. But what is the reason? What are the reasons that people make the same book, the same low quality book, over and over and over and over again? So there is this weird air of doubt surrounding any make money online pursuit, any channel, including mine, of course, because a lot of content creators, including myself, they want to protect their books from trolls, people that are maybe just going to go out and just leave their books bad reviews every time they show them off. Do I think that would actually happen? No, I don't think it would. But I also think that's totally fine and acceptable if you have a big audience. Now, the problem, in my opinion, is that beginners and people watching these videos, they also adopt this same mentality. And in my opinion, it is the most detrimental problem in this domain, and that's being cagey with your books, your ideas, your niches, keeping your $1 million idea to yourself, not showing your books to anybody because you think you're going to get copied. Now, this is a huge problem, because one of the best advantages that you can have as a beginner or somebody that isn't seeing success is to get feedback on what you are doing with your books. And the reason that I say this is because if you're not getting feedback on your books from someone that knows what they're talking about, from someone that has been through the shit, you will stay where you are for a very, very long time. And I've seen people do this. Believe it or not, I've seen people that don't ever want to share their books, and then eventually they show it and the books are terrible. And the reality is, like, you can do this, and I've seen people do this for years because they don't know what mistakes they're making. They don't know what standard that they should be hitting. They don't strive for a new standard. And the thing is, on top of all of this, people are going to copy you once you have a successful book. And how is it that I know this? Well, it's because I've done this for 10, 11, 12, 13 years, whatever it is, without any kind of guidance. And it took me a lifetime to make this work, to understand whether my books, my angles, unique selling points were good enough. And the other reason that I know this is because the people that I communicate with inside of my membership that actually showcase what they are doing so they can get feedback, so they can get better and make more sales. So there is a direct correlation between how successful you will be and how often you are getting feedback on what you are working on. And like I said, inside of my community, inside my membership, my Discord, I've seen people do this. I've seen people progress. I've literally watched people's success change in a matter of weeks to months because they're showcasing what they're doing and getting feedback. And it saves people so much time. It can shave off years. It can shave off thousands of dollars of money that would have been wasted on poor projects. Now, what I recommend that people do inside of my Discord before they go forward with any project is to get feedback on their book covers, their illustrations, their unique selling points. And then when they get enough good feedback from other publishers, people who've been successful, then they go forward with a project and have a much higher chance of making sales. So if you want to check this out, this is at chrisraydog.com. The Discord is part of the community. It's an amazing place to be. Tons and tons of feedback being given here. I am going to cover people's books inside of the public videos, but obviously inside the Discord, people share this. I share my own books as well. Pretty much everyone in the Discord knows which books are mine, books that I make my full-time income from. And I showcase all of my books, everything that I do inside the live calls. We do live calls every single Friday. I tend to do like an update of what I'm doing. And I showcase my own books pretty much every time that I come on, just to give an update as to what I'm doing. Inside of this, we have tons and tons of live recorded sessions. I talk about what went into my best-selling books, the most recent books that I've published, and what I think the recent trends are. And inside these live calls, like I said, I showcase the entire pen name that I'm working on, the new projects that I'm working on. I'm working on this all the time. The website that I'm building, how I'm capturing people's emails when they purchase books from me. So actually building a proper publishing business away from Amazon. I talk about all of this in the live calls here. And on top of all of this, we have, if you learn through course content, we have all the course content that you could possibly want, which is included with the Discord, the live calls. It's all included, from getting started to niche research, launching your book, Amazon ads, metrics, key studies, and of course, all the live calls are recorded. So if you want to check that out, it's chrisraydog.com. Come and get a load of feedback on what you're doing. So like I said, this is a cagey domain, and I truly do think that it is very detrimental to not share what you're doing, especially if you've not had any success. Not sharing what you're doing, not getting feedback, means you're probably not going to progress. So let's talk about inflated expectations. So it's unclear, to me, it's unclear, and this is not a virtue signaling pursuit here by any stretch of the imagination, but I think when we talk factually, there is a lot of bullshit. There is a lot of bullshit online regarding making money, especially with Amazon KDP. So typically people are going to lie to introduce people to the wonderful opportunity that no one has ever heard of, called Amazon KDP, how you can make $10,000, $100,000 per month. And it's usually with massively and wildly inaccurate numbers from exceptional cases. Now, again, this is not me trying to be distasteful, but if you go through YouTube, you look at these side hustle channels, you can see people touting their niches every single week that make $2,000, $5,000. It's just not the reality. It's nowhere near being that simple, unfortunately. Now, the thing is, with watching like niche videos, for example, okay, it's good to have a niche idea, but it's not paired with the reality of what makes publishing work, and that is the execution of the book, your angle, your book cover, how you budget for your advertising campaigns and things like that. And again, I do think this is one of the reasons why people quit, is because they have such high expectations. Like, hey, if this publisher is making 100,000 a month, if you enter into this niche, you can probably at least make that back. And rarely it just doesn't work that way. So when the reality dawns on people, they upload their first book and it's a flop, they end up quitting. So unfortunately, the solution here is to come back down to earth, use some logic. If something seems too good to be true, especially in the make money online world, it definitely is, trust me. And that is not to put people off. I do believe that people can make a substantial income from this. I do believe people can build a proper business utilizing Amazon as part of their business. I just think, who you take advice from is quite important as well. So I want to talk about high risk projects as well, because I got a lot of members that are working on high risk projects, because this is something that can work extremely well. It's something that can make you a lot of money. So it's where pretty much all of my income comes from. We have like hand-drawn books, really beautiful, quite expensive book covers made as well. There's a lot of money in these type of coloring book, trendy coloring book niches there, where I like to put my time, put my effort. But of course, when you do this as a beginner, you're investing more, which means you stand to lose more. Plus, you really have to think about this faded percentage of your books, especially as a beginner. So if you don't budget for a high risk pursuit, in the sense that your first book might fail, your second book might fail, your third book might fail, your fourth book might sell, your fourth book might fail, you still need to consider the budget for the entirety of all of those projects, not just your first book. So again, if you get this wrong, which most people do when they invest a ton of money, and I've known people to put $2,000, $3,000 into their first project, put more and more money into advertising campaigns, and the book just fell. So when you're doing a high risk project or any project, you have to put a stop on your advertising. So if you're going to launch a book with Amazon ads, there has to be some metric that you work by that says, at this point, I'm going to stop running the ads and move on to the next project. So if you want to see inside my account now, I'll show you how this works and how the faded percentage thing works as well when you get to a certain standard. So just into my account here, I'm going to give you a quick tip before I show you the metrics thing. So I've recently been exploring advertising in more than just a .com marketplace. I've been a bit of a pussy and only gone with a .com store and .uk store. Now what I'm looking at doing is that if I have a successful book and I have a successful .com advertising campaign, then we make that campaign again in the Canadian store, the Canadian marketplace, the Australian marketplace, the French marketplace, the Italian marketplace, the German marketplace, and the Australian marketplace. And typically, if it does well on .com, it's going to do well across those other marketplaces as well, which is why my advertising spend is much higher than it usually is. But as we can see, the ACOS is looking pretty fine. So when we talk about metrics that you can work with, let's go into one of my campaigns as an example. But let's go into my Meep campaign, which has been running for a fair while. Now, this is a bold and easy coloring book. So what I mean by metrics and cutting off a campaign, cutting off a project before you spend too much money on it, I will just show the spend for this one if we can here. So this is $92 this month, which is relatively low because I actually massively rely on organic sales. But when it comes to the advertising campaigns, we look at things like the clicks versus the orders. For automatic campaigns, I like to see something that is better than 1 in 20 converting. So that's one metric that you can go by to determine if you want to stop working on a project. The other thing that you can do is set a hard budget. So I used to set a hard budget about $250 per launch. You could set that much lower if you wanted to. And the other metric that I work by as well is how low I can get my cost per click. So just as an example here, what I like to do, if we go back to the lifetime of this here, what I like to do is start my campaigns quite high. This would have been at 25 cents, and I like to lower and lower and lower the cost per click as much as I can. So that's another metric that I go by. The other one that I go by is how many organic sales I'm getting after the first 1 or 2 months. So you have to have something in place to say to you, I'm going to stop working on this project, or I'm going to keep working on this project. So that is important. And again, back to the high risk projects, this can lead to people creating one project, it then fails, and then the person quits. And like I said, we need to really work within a failure percentage in mind and think about this long term. So I realized that I've just brushed over the whole failure percentage thing. What I would like to see, if I have a premium quality book for coloring books in particular, or activity books or low content books, if we're at this kind of premium standard, I look to have like one in five books that take off and do well. So you might be thinking, well, that's a lot of money that you're going to lose on the other projects. Now, that's why it's so important that you cut off your advertising when the metrics aren't looking particularly good, because what's going to happen when you do hit the winning books is that people will go back through your pen name and slowly purchase the other books as well. So what happens is, to give an example from my account, I've got like 3 or 4 best-selling books, not literal bestsellers, but they are my 3 or 4 best-selling books. Out of around 20 books, those make the majority of the income. Now, what happens to some of the other ones is that some of them take a month to make their money back, some take 6 months, and some take around a year. But what happens is, if you are cutting off your campaigns and dropping projects, you will eventually make that money back over time, which is what matters. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about poor guidance and your motivation. So it does seem like for beginners that people are more than happy to illogically take advice from just about anybody, whether that's on YouTube and Facebook groups. We just tend to take advice because people seem confident. So is it really that smart to take advice from someone who has nothing to show for their efforts? And I'm not trying to be distasteful, but I noticed that there's a lot of people, like on Facebook, for example, who are somehow, Facebook and Reddit, somehow these people are incredibly knowledgeable about publishing and making money online, but have absolutely nothing to show for it. So it makes no sense to take advice from someone that hasn't got anything to show for their efforts. And another example of that would be people telling you how to make $100,000 a month who can't even make $100 a month on YouTube, which is obviously very, very strange. So is having this opportunity sold to you what really motivates you to build something awesome? So the problem for this is when people get hyped up about this amazing opportunity, how so many people are making X amount of money these days with publishing, when the reality dawns on people, this kind of slump hits people and they realize, oh shit, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Again, that's when people end up quitting. So for me, being part of a community, there are other people who've got communities. Obviously, I'm going to push my own in my videos, but I do think genuinely being part of a community of publishers, people who have been successful, people who are beginners, who don't have preconceived ideas as to what is good and what works, getting lots of feedback, I do think, truly think, and I've seen it, that this is a game-changing pursuit. So again, if you want to check out the Raydog KDP membership community, where we have all the course content that you could possibly need to get started, all the live calls on Friday, which are all recorded. We've done some really interesting calls lately. I think I did like a mega crash course. Yeah, I did a mega crash course a couple of weeks ago, which was absolutely awesome. Again, it's the type of information that people charge thousands and thousands of dollars for. This is completely real. This is publishing. This is what works. This is from people that have been doing this for a long time. And my promise here is that this is going to be one of the most realist places that you can be when it comes to your publishing pursuits. Like I said, I showcase everything that I'm doing. Other publishers showcase what they're doing as well to get as much feedback as possible. If you're interested, check it out. It's chrisraydog.com.